I feel extremely fortunate that I've been provided the opportunity to have some directing experiences. But, speaking to what we just spoke about, it also brings to the forefront my imposter syndrome, and it brings forth my uh, introverted extrovert qualities. In the same way that's like, to be a lead in a show, I've been cast, I've gone through rehearsals, it's encouraged. It's like, this is your job. You have to say these lines and you have to sing these songs. Directing is different, where it's like somebody hands you the helm of an entire production and they're like, just make sure by this date it's ready to be seen by other people. But there's a lot of personalities you have to juggle. There's a lot of production elements you have to juggle. It took me a while to feel comfortable really making a strong stance and saying, this is what I believe, this is what I think it should be. And I understand that if you disagree, but at the end of the day, it is my job to make the executive decision about what the final vision is for our audience. But the way for me that has been really interesting and what I've tried to use as my constant approach is taking the best of the directors that I've had the privilege of working with and making a literal pros and cons list of my favorite and least favorite directors and saying, what are the things that I found that were not only great for the actors, what was great for the production team, what was great for the schedule of getting a show done, and then what are the things that I should avoid from those exact same directors that are poor communication with actors, or poor communication with your creative team, or not getting things done on time, or ineffective communication. One of the core things that I try to lead with that I'll credit to Mark Hoebee, who's the artistic director at Paper Mill Playhouse. He leads every rehearsal and every production with I don't necessarily believe I have all the right answers for this production, but I believe that it's my job to make the final decision about what those answers will be. So he creates like an open sandbox of rehearsal space where all the actors are invited to bring their ideas into the space. He really tries actively to create a space where everybody feels like they can make choices, pitch out ideas, and just ultimately have fun and play. And through that play process, you arrive on something that he eventually says, this is the take that we're going to keep. This is the blocking that's going to stick. And this is the most effective way to tell the story that I think we're trying to tell to this audience. But up until that final point, there's a little bit of malleable community engagement that allows us to all feel like we are putting together a show, as opposed to working with directors who are like, you are all my chess pieces, and I'm going to move you around wherever I want you to be, and I could not care less about what you think. This is my show. So I try to lead with that as being my forefront of being, it's really my job to just make the final decision about what our show is, but ultimately we all make a bigger contribution into this team sport. And then also creating really clear goalposts for not only the cast, but also for the creative team. So one of the things that I worked with the director in the past, who's really, really fun, and who I absolutely adore and is a very dear friend of mine, who has an issue with being really fun in the room, and then there comes a day, maybe 3-4 weeks into the rehearsal, where everybody should be off book, but nobody's off book yet, or there's one person who's not off book, and the director loses his patience and yells at the room. And while something needs to be addressed at that point, I don't necessarily agree that the manner with which that director is approaching that correctly. I think if you set a goal at the very beginning of the rehearsal process and say, hey, here's my expectation when it comes to learning lines, is we're going to learn the lines, we're going to rehearse with books in hands or whatever you think is comfortable, and then by this date, the books need to go away. Or after we block the scene, I want you to make your best effort to do the scene as best as you can off book, and if you need to call line, you call line. But ultimately, just setting the foundation for what your needs are for the production and for the production team, starting at the very beginning in the first rehearsal, just gives everybody an idea of how we're working to get there together. Because I don't believe yelling at that single actor is beneficial for anyone, when it could have been avoided simply by just saying it 2 weeks earlier. So those are kind of the things that I like to lead with is playground, open every team sport, and then just really clear goals that we're all working towards so that I'm as open and available as I can be with being like, here's where we're trying to do our first run through. Here's when the designer run is. Here's when we want to be done with Act 1. Here's when we want to be done with Act 2. And when I really need you to be off book. And then from there, if things need to be addressed, we have a better idea when and where those problems come up.